welcome back to the 73rd episode of the Korea podcast. I'm your host, Jack, located in South Korea, and the podcast is about anything and everything related to living and working in South Korea, starting a business in South Korea, as well as anything else that's going on around the peninsula, in Korea and other Asian countries. And today I'm joined by a guest speaker, Lindsay, who is a long-time expat. I attached a brief bio below the video, and he's been living and working in South Korea for a while and has moved since. Let's bring Murray on here. Welcome to the show, Murray, to the show. The show!
Thanks, Jack. Great to be on and talk about South Korea and comparing it to other countries.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do today. So, you worked and lived in South Korea for 12 years, is that correct?
Yes, I came in July of 2001 and left for good in April of 2014, but there were a couple of breaks, so it was off and on for about 12 years.
Wow, that's because when you wrote that down, I was a bit surprised, to be honest, because that's a long while. Like, when did you come to Korea?
Yeah, so what happened is I graduated from St. Thomas University in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, with a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism. And my original dream was to be a broadcast journalist like Bobby the Brain Heenan or Mean Gene Okerlund. And it was my last exam, and I was walking out of my political science after doing my paper, and I saw an advertisement on the wall: "Go teach English in South Korea. Make 25 grand. Teach English with your fellow grad." And I was swimming in debt. I had $40,000 in student loans, and I have the perfect face for radio. So I decided to go on a plane and head to South Korea. So that's how I first came to South Korea. It was July. Actually, it was like about 19 years ago this week.
Wow, it's been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what brought you to South Korea?
Yeah, so basically I always wanted to be a broadcast journalist. Like, I wanted to work for TSN, or I wanted to do something in sports or whatever. And my last year in university, I volunteered at Rogers Cable and helped record live political shows. And I was a sports editor for my university paper. I had a college radio show called Buzzbin. And I just got burned out, and I didn't really see a future in it. And just lo and behold, I saw this advertisement to teach English in South Korea. And the kicker is I found out that I had a long lost cousin in South Korea living in the city of who lived in the city of Daegu. So it kind of felt like the TV show Perfect Strangers. So I talked to him, and I originally had a job in Seoul, South Korea, working for a kids academy, but he had an in at his old job, which is called Moongkong English, and they're like a really big franchise in Daegu. So I didn't know anything about South Korea besides the TV show MASH.
Right.
So what I did is I went to the public library and got a VHS tape. It was called Land the Morning Calm. It was a 1-hour video about what to see and do in South Korea. And 19 years ago this week, I arrived on a hot and humid night.
So there were because when I was looking at, leaving Canada and going to teach abroad, Japan was pretty much the first thing that popped up. Korea was not even on my radar. So, but in your case, it was the other way around, I guess.
Yeah, I had no clue that there was a career out of teaching abroad, be it China, South Korea, Japan, Middle East. I didn't know anything about it. It was just a random advertisement walking out of my last exam on the wall, and because of that advert and because I had a long lost cousin, I ended up making ESL my career.
Nice. Did you end up meeting
and
your
also
cousin?
too, the only other thing I knew about South Korea, Jack, was they were going to have the World Cup 1 year later, And my first job, I lived in the suburbs in a little town called CG. And they just built the World Cup. So I was like a 15-minute walk from the World Cup stadium.
Nice. I had a friend who came to Korea for the same reason. Like he was recruited under the pretext of, come down here, have a look at the World Cup, and if you don't like it, you can go back. Like the recruiter paid for his flight and everything. And so my buddy came down here and ended up staying for, I don't know, a prolonged period of time, like several years. Ended up getting married here and stuff. Went back to Canada eventually.
Yeah, for me, I was 40 grand in debt, and I remember my hanging out with my friends and kind of making up like a little map. Like you're 23 net, like I was 23 at the time. Mm-hmm. If you work really hard, you could be 26 or 27 and out of debt. And so I originally thought it would be maybe like a 2 or 3 year gap year, like maybe like a gap year for 3 years abroad. But then lo and behold, 19 years later, 3 different countries, I'm still going strong.
Yeah, very nice. So 12 years in Korea. Give us a rundown of like your experiences here. Because you worked in hagwons, you worked in universities. What were some of the high times, low times? Like, just give us a little rundown of your experiences in South Korea.
Yeah, like for me, a lot of people when they first go abroad, they go through culture shock, like language and food and travel. I didn't really go through that. I thought like my first couple of years, it was fun. It was just full of excitement. Like I didn't realize there was this niche, that there were other Westerners and things to do. One of the fortunate things with me is I came in a really good era. Like there wasn't social media. It was easier to move up the ranks because after a couple of years working at an academy, I was able to get my first college job in 2005 with just a BA.
Right.
Like nowadays you need 2 years and a master's degree just to even get your resume to the director. But back in the Wild West, they didn't have all those things.
No, yeah.
And because I was kind of a social because I was a social butterfly, I was able to work from an academy to a college job. And my first college job was Youngjin, and it was a fantastic experience. I remember being 26 working at a college and had a nice apartment from the college. And I remember at the end of the summer, I threw a house party. So I told all of my friends, and all of my friends told their friends and their friends. So throughout the whole night, I think maybe like 100 people came. Yeah. And I had like 12 noise complaints. The cops came. And this wasn't a very good, it's like my first month there. And come to work like George Costanza. And I got brought into my director, and he said like we had like 13 noise complaints and 2 reports from the cops, and you threw a party. So it didn't really leave a very good first impression.
Yeah, right. Where was that?
Youngjin College in Daegu.
Daegu. I remember when I first came to Korea, Daegu was kind of notorious for noisy foreigners.
Daegu's it's a great city. It's very expat friendly. I found the community is very close. Softball, bowling, poker nights. It was a real sense of community, and I think that's the reason why I didn't feel homesick or culture shock. Like it kind of felt like my first 4 or 5 years. I kind of still felt like a university student. But I had my own apartment and I had a decent wage. Because I still went out on the weekends and like a weekend warrior and stuff. But when I was first hired, I was the worst teacher ever. Like picture the worst teacher ever times 10. That was me. Like I had no classroom management skills. I didn't know how to lesson plan. I didn't know how to pace a lesson. I didn't know how to do learner objectives. Like I was terrible. I'm surprised I was able to last so long.
Yeah, I think that was the case with most people that were coming down here around that time, 2001, 2. Like I remember my first teaching experience in Japan. I was also very unorganized and kind of a loose cannon. Our supervisor was an Australian fella who's been in Japan for, I don't know, like 10 or 15 years, and he used to call us the Ring of Fire. There was like 3 or 4 guys who were working at this hagwon in Japan. And yeah, he used to call us the Ring of Fire because we'd always just, we were teaching in an adult hagwon, so all our clients or our students were adults, 18 and up. But I mean, that just made things worse because we'd end up going out with our students after work and drinking or, hooking up on the weekend and playing soccer and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, like they were wonderful memories. I have like millions of good memories. Like I remember my first year, 2001, 2002. I ended up getting tickets for the World Cup, and I randomly got tickets for the third place game because you had to put your name in a raffle, and I had to pay like $25 for a ticket. And lo and behold, South Korea ended up knocking out all these heavyweights in football, and I ended up going to the third place game between Turkey and South Korea.
Nice. When you were talking about the sense of community, I get it. I don't know if you're aware, but when I came to Ulsan, it was a similar thing. I met a lot of really cool people very quickly, and back then you were walking on the street, and when you saw an expat, you would either you'd say hello because either you didn't know them. Or you didn't know them, or the other way around. You knew them, and so you'd say hi.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was one of the cool things of first living abroad. I can remember being on a bike and seeing a foreigner. So I took a kickboard, right? So my first paycheck in 2001, I had 2.2 million, and I bought a case of beer, a kickboard, and a couple of CDs. So I was just cruising on my little kickboard and with the little glow in the dark wheels and saw a couple of Western people going to a restaurant, so I jump out, I took board, and that was just like it was just like you didn't see other foreigners, so it was just like, and then like, hey, what's your name? Where are you at?
Right.
And when you became friends, like I found in abroad, like you become it's a very intense friendship because you're abroad, you're young, and you go through similar experiences. So kind of like you rent friends for a year.
Yeah, it's slightly changed. Like these are the same experiences I had in Korea in 2005, 6, 7. Things are changed right now for me personally because my life is very different. But I assume that even people, single people, the community of expats here in Ulsan itself is quite small. Actually, a lot of people left. And when I talk to other expats randomly, they say the same thing. It's the community here was quite large, and now it's shrunk. So, yeah, I don't know. And so, yeah, you do tell more about how did you end up moving to Saudi Arabia? Right now you're in Saudi Arabia. How long have you been there? Now?
Since April of 2014. Okay. So for 6 years, but I had like little gaps. So it's kind of similar to Korea. Like I work 2-3 years here, take some time off, come back.
Okay. And
so what happened was I originally left Korea for good and went to China in 2010 for a year working for Walt Disney English, and it was all over the media maybe about a month ago that they closed all their schools in China. So I got there in 2010 when they were first opening up. And Walt Disney English wanted to have 150 schools. They wanted all this synergy because they're opening up Disney World in Shanghai. So they kind of used that to kind of like sell Disney products to 3 to 6-year-old kids. They had to use Disney products and Disney film and Disney materials to teach English. So I kind of flamed out from that, went back to South Korea, and my last 4 years there, I worked at a university. And then my visa got denied. I was transferring jobs. And then I ended up going to Saudi Arabia. I went through a website called SeriousTeachers.com, and there was an ad for Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia has 2 different types of visas. It has like a business work visit visa. It has one called an Iqama. 90% of the time, they'll bring you on a work visit business visa because it's quicker to get you here. Because a work visa can take several months because you need a background check, notarize your documents, and that kind of thing.
Okay. So why did you choose not to? So one of the things you mentioned earlier in terms of like salaries, the differences between Korea and Saudi Arabia, I guess.
Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of perspective, my highest paying job in South Korea was at Yongnam University my third year. I was like a level 2 instructor. I think I made 2.5 million won, but after pension and taxes, it came to about 2.15. So I think that's about $2,000 Canadian.
Yeah.
Just to give for comparison's sake, I work at a university now, and my base salary for 20 hours a week is $4,800 Canadian.
Wow.
And then any hour after that is $60 an hour. So before the pandemic, I was teaching 35 hours a week. So I was making about $700 to $7,500 a month. And the only expenses I have is my living expenses, like my internet, my phone, and my groceries, because my university provides a really nice apartment. So I'm really fortunate I don't need to pay for that. And before I worked here, I worked for a military contract called Blue Force, teaching military cadets. And for 3 years there, I was like a head teacher.
In Saudi Arabia?
Yes. And my pay there was, with Canadian, was about $8,000. So I make, like right now, my base salary is about twice as much as I would be making in South Korea.
Right. So before I start asking you questions about your COVID life or life under COVID in the SA, let me just ask you some kind of basic questions about Saudi Arabia. Where are you located right now?
I'm located in the city of Riyadh. It's the capital of Saudi Arabia.
Is that like the place where most expats end up when they move to Saudi Arabia?
No, so there's a lot of cities. So the three most popular cities are Jeddah, Dammam, Al-Khabar, and Riyadh. So in my time here, I worked in a small little town of about a couple 100,000 people called Al-Waj. I worked in Riyadh, and I worked in Dammam. So I worked in two really big cities and one really small city.
What was it like living in a smaller city in the middle of
so I worked there from July of 2014 to August of 2015. It was a college. The government of Saudi Arabia wanted to open up all these technical colleges to train adults 18 to 24 in skills that they can go into the workplace. So it was a total startup. I lived in a small town called Al-Waj, which it's near the Red Sea. There was like one laundromat, there was like one video store, there was a couple of restaurants. It was a really quiet place. Not a lot to do. The only thing I can think of, it would be like kind of like a really small rural city in Korea.
Right. How would you compare like a small rural city in Korea to one in Saudi Arabia? Do they compare like? Obviously it's a very different culture and stuff, but.
Well, even with I'm trying to think like a small city in Korea, like maybe like there's a city between Daegu and Busan. It's like a 15-minute ride on a bus. We're trying to say called Changwon. Yeah, I think it's called Changwon or Changwon. But I find even in Korea, even if you live in a small town or city, you still have the KTX. You still have like a really good bus system or train system, so you can still get out and out and about and go to like Busan or Daegu or Seoul. With Al-Waj, they only had flights going to Riyadh or Jeddah or Dammam once or twice a week. So you were kind of stuck.
Right.
And like the big, like I was in a small city called Al-Waj in this province called Yanbu, and the capital of the Yanbu province was Umluj. And Umluj was like a 3-hour drive. So Saudi Arabia is cutting like provinces, kind of like the same as Korea. Like, you know how you have Gyeongsang, Bukdo, and like Seoul and stuff. It's kind of the same here, like different provinces.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What's
so you're kind of like.
What's healthcare like?
I knock on wood. I never had to go to the hospital except for my medical for my IGAMA. I will say is that the dental care is fantastic. Orthodontic work, dental work here is really good. But I can't say about what's the hospital. Like I never had to go to the hospital for being sick. But it's kind of like the same as Korea. Like Korea, you guys have yakuks, right? Like here, we have pharmacies everywhere. You just go and pick up medicine.
Right. So I guess, because you're talking to a guy, like I've never been to Saudi Arabia. I have no idea what it's like, the glimpses that I caught of things on TV are very limited, I guess. But from what I understand, Saudi Arabia is one of the most, what's the word?
Conservative?
One of the most Islamic countries.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Like the Prophet Muhammad came from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's got a reputation for being very conservative, but I find in my 6 years here, like I've seen a lot of change. Like women can drive a car. They used to have WWE super events here.
Okay.
They had a world heavyweight boxing match here in December with Carlos Ruiz and someone else. There's rumors that they're going to have a UFC event. Before everything happened, they were having these celebrate Saudi Arabia events with like artists and stuff like that. So like it's getting better. It's getting more open and more outgoing and stuff. Like I didn't really know much about Saudi Arabia when I came here 6 years ago. It was just kind of like South Korea. I just threw a dart and luckily I hit a bullseye. But you know, I've been pleasantly surprised. The people are really friendly. The food is good. The weather's really hot. Like right now, it's 45 degrees. It's usually in the summer between 45 to 50 degrees. But it's a really good. I like it. I feel like, you know, going from South Korea to here, it kind of like rejuvenated my career because of Saudi Arabia. I was able to get my CELTA, and like I like South Korea, but I kind of felt like nowadays with young people going there, like you have like Facebook and Instagram, like you can find out stuff about your city before you even arriving. But back in my day, like it was more of an adventure. Like all you knew about South Korea was from forums on Dave's ESL Cafe. And then when you would get here, like when I got here, I would go out and drink and party and stuff, and I'd become friends with people and I would network that way. But now you don't need to network that way. Now you can just use social media.
Right. My favorite guest showed up complaining that I can't spell Rihad and I misspelled your name. I did misspell your name, dude. I spent it with L capital L capital I and NSA. I need to correct that after the podcast.
Yeah, that's no problem. Like life in South Korea, like I feel really lucky that I came at 23 years old, right out of university, kind of like a bumpkin. I never went on a plane before. And when I got to South Korea, because of that community that we had in Daegu, like, you know, people kind of adopted and looked out and took care of me. And because of South Korea, and like, you know, I got to work at a college, I got to work at a university. Because of that, I got my MA online. Like, I feel like, you know, this ESL career has been I've been very fortunate in this community. Like, whenever I try to quit, like, I don't want to teach anymore. I'm burned out. And I'll go home. But when I go home to the Maritimes in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada, I work at a call center. And I just find like the people, like it's just not really enticing. It's not very interesting. Like I find living abroad, it's more of an exciting life.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I'm in that Bill Murray movie, Lost in Translation.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah.
How often do you get to go back home then?
I usually go home. Usually I go home when I get burned out. So, but I find recently it's usually between 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
That I'm never going to teach again.
Right.
Like that's what happened with my last job with Blue Force. It was a rule. So I'll backtrack a bit. So in Saudi Arabia, really, there's two types of jobs. There's like jobs like what I had, like a university, and in that vein, there's universities, colleges, and there's also private academies like Wall Street English. And then you also have on the other end of the spectrum, you have like military contracts like Salient, Blue Force, Booz Allen. And I worked at one of those for 3 years, and that's a meat grinder of a job. Like it's turnover. It's a huge community of people. So like I have lots of stories about that. Like I can remember that was the first job I had where I lived on a compound, and my compound life was really, really nice. Like it's a guarded, gated community. You have like a gym and a supermarket, and you live in villas, and there's like swimming pool.
I think I remember vaguely seeing something you posted somewhere on one of the media platforms. about you living in a compound, but that was way back.
Yeah, from 2016 to 2018.
Yeah. How do you get a hold of a military contract like for teaching? How did you get a hold of that job?
Well, okay, with that job, so what happened was when I worked in LYs for a year, I one year I made 50 grand, and I thought 50 grand was like $500,000. I had no concept that you can run out of money pretty quickly. So I went home for a year and didn't work and just blew through it. Kind of like Ricky from Chiller Park Boys when he gets out of jail. He thought he had a lot of money and blew in like 3 days. So what happened was is that through South Korea, who I used to work with a friend at college, and he had a friend working at this military contract, so he put me in contact with him. And what happens is with military contracts is that they're always up for rebidding every 3 to 5 years. So this one was up for bidding. Blue Force won the contract. They sacked all the previous teachers from the previous company, so they needed to bring other people in. And I was down to my last like $500 and gave them my resume. It was a U.S. government contract, and 2 weeks later, I was on a plane going to Dammam, Saudi Arabia. And it was a really good experience. Like I was one of the like 4 Canadians. It's mostly Americans. That was a bit of a culture shock because here I'm working with 75 people, and maybe half of them are 45, 50 and older, and they're all trying to make money for retirement.
Right.
And and you're teaching, but you're at that job, you're teaching from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. because the cadets come out of their barracks and go to your class. And then after 6 months of me teaching there, I got promoted to head teacher. So I was responsible for 30 teachers, like observing them, going over their records, meetings.
So did that mean more pay or just more responsibilities on top of your?
More pay, but it wasn't very much. It was just an extra $500 on my extra $500, but you do way more work. Right. I felt like a force. Like people feel like a head teacher or like in your position running Shane English, like, oh, it's not a lot of work, but you do a lot more work behind the scenes.
It's
like
a shitload of work.
Administrative work. So it gave me another couple hats. And what happened was with that, I came home. Well, I went to Thailand first, and then I went home and worked at the call center job. And I tried to like it, and I tried to make a go of it, and I just didn't really didn't fit. And got serious about wanting to go back to teach, and found this ad on Dave's ESL Cafe. Bada boom, bada bing. I came here in October of 2019.
Are there any specific dress codes for expats?
Yeah. Well,
any way that you're expected to dress, other than I guess I don't know, suit and tie or whatever it is that you would wear at the uni.
I can remember in South Korea, like Hong Kong English or G&B, because those were the 2 academies I worked at before I went to college or university. I can come in like cargo shorts and sandals and a shirt. At Yeongnam and Yeongjin, I had to wear. You got to be formal, right? Like maybe a shirt and tie. So I wore suits. So my military contract, you had to wear black slacks, black shoes, and like a long sleeve blue shirt that says Blue Force on it. With my current university job, it's very similar to what university jobs are like in South Korea. Like, just be dressed clean, be tidy, be clean. No ripped jeans, no mustard stained shirt. So I just wear suits.
But is that a requirement or just your own personal preference?
My own personal preference, but they don't want you to dress like a bum or like you're slumming it, right? Yeah. So just be neat, like slacks and a shirt, that kind of thing. Kind of similar to like what university would be like in Korea. Like they don't want you wearing camo shorts and a shirt at a university in South Korea. And they don't want you to do that here in Saudi Arabia either.
Sure. And how are you doing? So, you can't buy booze, right? In Saudi Arabia. Right. How do you fight through that? Have you quit, or do you make flights over to Abu Dhabi?
Okay, so story? So in South Korea, I was a weekend warrior. Like I'd go out every Friday and Saturday and drink. And like when I would go home, I would booze it up and drink and stuff. But I find here, like I don't miss it. Like if I need to go and party, what you can do is you can go to Bahrain. So Bahrain's like a 1 hour flight from Riyadh, Or when I lived in Dammam, it's like a 45-minute drive to the border. So they have Bahrain that you can go there, and it's kind of like it's like a little miniature Thailand. It's like pubs and bars and drinking and debauchery and stuff. And like I knew people I worked at Blue Forest who would go there every weekend, and I don't think they saved any money. I think like they blew it there.
There's a question here. Let me just. Okay. Here's a question from Chris. He's asking, in your time from South Korea and in the Middle East, if you return to South Korea with your experience, how would you approach South Korea? And asking as if you were to return to South Korea.
Okay, so how like what would my life be like, or what would I be like teaching? You mean?
If you return to South Korea with your experience, how would you approach South Korea? Yeah. I guess like how would you? I don't know. What would your life be like in South Korea? I guess how would you live your life?
It'd be different. It would be very, very, very different. Like I was always not broke. I was never financially secure in South Korea. I remember about the savings I did have in 2011. I invested in myself to get a master's degree because that was very important to work at a university in Korea. If I were to go to South Korea now after my experience here with my little nest egg of money, I would feel no pressure. If I went back to South Korea, it'd just be for the enjoyment of the community, the enjoyment of living there, the food. It wouldn't be like I wouldn't be working all the time, like teaching and privates. And if I did go back to South Korea, I'd only go back for a university or college job. And I would just do my 15, 20 hours a week and not pick up any extra classes because I already have my money stashed away. Also, too, being here, like I got a lot of experience in like how to be a head teacher, how to run meetings, how to do admin work. So now I kind of have a better appreciation of head teachers that I've had before. Because I could be a difficult person. I could be kind of like a headstrong, difficult person to work with. But now I kind of know what it's like on that other end.
Right. What's the competition like in terms of staffing? Like, you know, we've been going through kind of here in Korea, right? At one point there were a lot of English teachers. Now, because of either Corona or the salaries that are, you know, stagnating, so to speak, a lot of people went back home. Chris says, great answer, by the way. Nice, he says. So he liked that answer. Thanks, man. So in Korea, the staffing, like right now we're at a point where there is a high demand, but in terms of supply, the supply of teachers is quite low. So what is that? How does that compare to Saudi Arabia?
Well, I know that right now there's Salient's won the military contract for several cities here, like Jeddah and I think Dammam, outside Dammam. So like there's jobs here, mostly military contracts. Like for my job, for my university job here, we're not doing any hiring. Like there's a couple people leaving in August because their contracts run out. We're not replacing them. So we're just kind of like staying static. It's like, but in my university, we have two departments. One's called PYP and one's called Community Services. I work in a Community Services department. So we get contracts from like military cadets and government officials. And in the PYP program, you're teaching freshmen and sophomores conversational English, the 4 basic skills. So I think that with university jobs, and I don't know, but this for my university, it's going to be kind of flat. But I do know that you could probably get a job at a military contract, depending if they're hiring. Like the Salient contract, it's up for, they won the contract from somebody else, but I know the experience because I worked at one before that the contracts come up every couple of years and there's a bid on it from other companies like Chinega, Blue Force, Salient. And usually if the person loses the contract, they'll put a protest up, and that can take 6 to 9 months to go through the U.S. government courts to see who won the contract.
Interesting. Right. I'm just trying to dig up some other questions.
Well, like for me, this to let people know, like living in South Korea, like I really enjoyed it. Like I liked baseball, and I've been told that you guys have your baseball league open right now, the KBO. Like
Yeah, they're
originally,
open, but I
yeah,
think
like
I'm not sure that people actually go in. The last of what I saw, baseball, they had it was open, but it was just for the players. They only had mannequins and cardboard boxes sitting in the bleachers, man. So I don't know if there's actually people going to the games.
well, like before the COVID pandemic happened, I had a vacation for 4 weeks in September, and I was originally planning on returning to South Korea and going to my old stomping grounds like Daegu,
Mm.
and go to my old hometown and my old where I used to live in CG, and like go around to everywhere I used to work and just remember it. Like I have a lot of good memories of South Korea. Like, I was a spunky 23-year-old kid who didn't know how to do jack crap in class, and now 19 years later, like I'm pretty proficient at it.
Yeah.
Like when I was home, whenever I take breaks home, I try another career. I kind of feel like Walter White from Breaking Bad. Remember when Walter White opened up that A2 car wash, have an A1 day,
Yeah.
but he didn't really like it. He liked going and being a meth dealer, right? So I kind of feel like with me, like whenever I go home and work at these other jobs, like it doesn't feel kind of feels fake.
Mm.
And I kind of like what I'm doing now. Like it's real, and I'm good at it. So and I became good at it because of all the mistakes I made in South Korea.
Mm.
I was a terrible, awful teacher for a couple of years, and I kind of learned.
Mm.
So I would recommend to people if they want to go and teach abroad, I'd recommend to get your CELTA beforehand. You get live teaching experience in the class. You have tutors. You learn how to lesson plan. Like I learned everything by trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to get my CELTA in 2015, I was really good at certain things, but I was really poor at certain things. So I picked up a lot of bad habits.
Right. Yeah, it definitely helps to have experience. I think my first year as well, both in Japan and then when I came to Korea, I had a year of teaching under my belt, but I was teaching kids, which was a completely different experience from what I used to teach. Um, and
Like I don't think they have academies here teaching kids. Like I don't know of anything like that. I think they do have public school jobs here, but they don't have like G&B
Mhm.
or Moon Kong or Ding Ding Dang. I don't think they have those here in Saudi Arabia.
So they got it's mainly teaching adults when you get down there.
Well, yeah, like Wall Street English, maybe public elementary school, maybe middle school. I think they may have public school jobs, but I never really heard of them.
Yeah.
And military contracts and college university jobs, but I could be mistaken.
All right. So please do tell. I want to ask some questions about your COVID experience in
Okay.
Saudi Arabia. What's happening there? Like, a lot of countries, the UK is shut down, the States are shut down. It's like both of these countries seem to have become a complete military state. I've heard stuff in Italy and like Spain, people can't even go out in the street without being harassed by cops and, all that stuff. You're like in England, I think you're allowed to go out once a day to go shopping, buy some groceries, and then got to get your ass back home. I don't know who's monitoring that and how, but apparently that's reinforced in some weird way. In Korea, we were shut down for 2 months. Businesses were down. A lot of them didn't recover. We managed to stay afloat and are kind of getting back on track. A lot of things happened, but Korea is kind of recovering, right? So what's the situation like in Saudi Arabia?
Well, Jack, that's a really good question. So just to back up a bit, back in March when the virus was kind of getting more widespread in other countries, I would talk to my students. I had 2 sets of classes. One class was military cadets at the Army base in Riyadh. Then my evening were government officials. So I was tipped off a few days before lockdown that Saudi Arabia was going to go into lockdown. So we went lockdown, I think March 19th, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that I had classes on Sunday, and a couple of my students came in really sick, like coughing and wheezing. So I joked around a bit, like, "Hey, you got the kung flu? You got the virus?" And they were kind of sick. And I remember my last class, I went home, and then I got a text message at 10 o'clock at night that Saudi Arabia, as of midnight, Saudi Arabia is locking everything down. So we were in lockdown So for in Riyadh, we were locked down, but there was like little parts, like 9 a.m. to 12 or 1 p.m. to 4. You can get out and go to the supermarket or go to the pharmacy. But we opened up on January, I'm going to say, sorry, June 19th. So we reopened. Everything's reopened now. But you have to walk around, wear a mask, and anywhere you go, they take a test of your temperature, or they have these like robotic machines. When I go to the mall, that will take your body scan. It was boring for the first couple months. Like everything was pretty closed. Like in my neighborhood, the pharmacy, the laundromat, everything was closed except for the supermarket. So it kind of felt like a ghost town. But then Saudi Arabia had, I think from May 20th to June 20th, they were going to open up in stages, like stage 2, stage 3. So ever since June 19th, like we reopened it, but you have to walk around, wear a mask. And to me, it's not really a big deal, right? Like if I have to go somewhere, I'll just put a mask on and come back.
But so you're not officially teaching it, or what's the story?
No. So what happened is that it's kind of up in the air what my classes are doing. I'm guessing that in August 16th, when I'm supposed to be back in the classroom, I'll be teaching. And I think what we're going to be doing online classes. I've been rumor has it at my university will be doing online from August to December.
Okay. So,
but everything's up in the air. Like my director talks to my Saudi director, but
yeah.
I was at the university maybe a few weeks ago, and they were putting in like these special desks, and they were making plans to limit the amount of students in a class from, I think my class maximum is 20 to like 12. So I actually like that because when you have smaller classes, it's easier to teach. Everyone gets to contribute more. Because when you have 20 students, some students can kind of not do their work.
Yeah.
And there's big differences between Korean students and Saudi students as well. So
what are they?
I found the one thing I was really surprised, like that first day in April 2014, working my first day in a Saudi classroom, like Saudis are very friendly, outgoing, gregarious. Like their culture here, like they sit out in the desert and they'll drink tea and smoke shisha, and it's a very communicable community here. Like they chat. But I found the grammar and reading is kind of weak. Right. And in South Korea, I didn't have to really, grammar was a breeze because they learned it in public school. So when I worked at Yeongnam or Gyeongil or Yeongjin, I just didn't have to explain grammar that much. It was more like speaking practice for them.
Right.
And I found South Koreans generally were more reserved and shy, and Saudis are more outgoing. But they're both of them. It's a good experience to teach at, but you got to wear different hats.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's similar thing when you compare how people learn English, like in Thailand, I guess. Just culturally, people are a lot more interactive. Thais, there's a lot of Thais, like smaller businesses, pick up random, English expressions because they need it for their business. But I guarantee you, they can't read or write in English. Not that much, probably, right? So.
Yeah, like my last couple of classes, my 2 military classes were beginner classes, so I had to, go over basic stuff like reading. They don't really understand what they're reading, so I have to teach them how to like read quickly, scan and stuff. But like also too with like one of the benefits of living in the Middle East, Jack, is I got to go to Petra, Jordan, and see the pyramids in Egypt. So that's nice. 2 things off of my merman's bucket list. Like, I didn't realize coming over here, like there were so many interesting countries you can visit. Like in South Korea, I didn't really take advantage of traveling. Like, went to China, went to Japan, went to Thailand, but I didn't really go to like Hong Kong or Singapore or Malaysia. So since coming here, like I think I've been to like 10 different countries, like Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan, Oman, Morocco. Morocco was really good. So I've taken my experience in South Korea, like when I have my vacations now, and because I have the finances to, like I'll just go on vacations. So I'm hoping that in January I can go to the Maldives for a couple weeks.
Right. So what is it like to travel through the Middle East, man? Because I spent a year in Turkey, and I felt like this was the closest place that I could get to the Middle East without actually being inside the Middle East. Because Middle East, on the news, it's always portrayed as the place that you do not want to be. But you just mentioned you visited Lebanon and all these places. So what is that like, man?
Middle East, there's a lot of interesting places to go see and do. I have no negative experience at all with traveling. And generally, the travel's not that bad. It's maybe 4 to 6 hours, depending on what country you have to go to.
But I mean, in terms of safety, I guess that's my question.
Knock on wood, right? I've never had any issues. I've had more issues traveling in Asia. Give you an example, going out for a night of town in South Korea, depending on if you're talking to a female, some South Korean males, especially older ones, when they're drunk, they get really aggressive and they'll pick a fight with you. And unfortunately for me, and that's why I had to leave Korea, is that I got into a bit of a dust up and I had to pay a fine. And because of that fine, it had a spot on my record when I went from one city to another city. And I'm like, well, I find that in South Korea, the laws are really skewed against the foreigner. It's matter if they had every right to do what they did, oh, you're wrong.
Right. I guess you don't have the same brushes with the law in Saudi Arabia, right?
No, I've never had problems with walking out in the street and someone saying F you, Miguk, or no. And I'm not, again, to be fair to people listening to this, it happens very rarely, but it's very, I don't have that here in the Middle East.
Right.
You don't have people causing you problems. One thing that's really surprised me about in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia is that when you travel around and when you go out, most jobs at restaurants or at malls or grocery shops, it's Bangladeshis, Filipinos, etc. that are working there. So it's English is very widely spoken here in Saudi Arabia.
What's dating like?
So, if you go honestly, they got Tinder and stuff. But if when I lived in a compound, it's a lot easier. But it's difficult.
Yeah, it's not really a place where we head out to a local bar and.
Well, no, there's an old saying, Jack. When you come to Saudi Arabia, you come with 2 buckets, and when both buckets are full, that's when it's time to leave, right? So, the first bucket is full of money, and the second bucket is full of bullshit. So when both buckets are overflowing, that's when it's time for you to go.
Right.
Kind of, right?
So it just depends on the size of the buckets you bring with you, I guess.
It's difficult here sometimes, right? The heat, it could be the heat, and the job can be kind of difficult sometimes. If especially at a military contract, the general force feeds these cadets into your class, and they don't want to learn English. But if they fail out of the program and ask to leave, they got to pay back their salary to the military. But if they can get dismissed academically or for that, they keep their salary. Because I know that as an admin, writing conduct report cards for these guys, for these people to be dismissed.
Interesting. Something else I wanted to ask. It was on my mind and it skipped. Beard. Let's talk about your beard, man, because I posted a picture on the thumb and you look very different. What's up with the beard?
Well, what happened was when we shut down March 19th, I didn't think that I had no concept of the COVID virus. I thought that we'd be open back up again in a couple of weeks. I had no understanding of the virus. So I'll just grow a beard until I go back to class, right? So right now, technically, I'll be going back to class August 16th. But it depends on who I hear from my director. I could be teaching online through Zoom, or I could be in the classroom. So that's why I grew up this monstrosity here, because I had nothing better to do.
Just to keep yourself sane, huh?
Yeah.
3 months of prolonged vacation. Can you leave Saudi Arabia right now, or it's?
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's a good question. What happened is when they went into lockdown. Embassies like Canada, America, informed us that the borders are closing. If you want to get out now. But what happened maybe a month ago, several teachers were able to leave Saudi Arabia and go back to their hometowns until things clear up. I thought about it, but then I said, you know what? It's probably like China opened back up in 3 months. So I thought that we'd be opening back up in 3 months. And I don't want to go through the hassle of traveling 21 hours back. And it might be difficult for some people returning because their visas could have expired. Right? Because one of my colleagues is on a work visit visa. I think it expires soon. So if it does expire when we go back to work, what happens? Does he get stuck at the border? Does the guy get a new visa? So I just decided to stay put. And, that was a really good decision on my part because we reopened on June 19th. Okay. So everything's back to normal. The only thing is you got to wear a mask and stuff, but that's just common sense. If the WWE superstar Kane can go in the Royal Rumble and last 1 hour and throw out 12 people in the ring, I can wear a mask going to the supermarket.
Yeah. Korea, I mean, the masks, there's reports of like in the States, people are up in arms for wearing masks, or like people ridicule others who do wear masks. It's very strange to hear stuff like that because it's so commonly done in Korea and I think in Japan as well, right? So like if you're in Asia,
that really shocked me, Jack, hearing about that. Like it's all over my Facebook and stuff, right? Like I know because I worked with a lot of Americans at my last job, and so I'm just trying to figure out like, well, what's the big deal? Like there was no problem here in Saudi Arabia. Like the government said you got to wear a mask. Everyone wears a mask. There was no protest, and there was nobody out with pitchforks. They just decided, okay, yeah, sure, we'll wear them.
No masks allowed. One last question I really wanted to ask you is, so back in the day, this was like long way back, I was kind of looking at going to Saudi Arabia, because of the money. Like I heard you could make a lot of money, so I was looking into what's required. And one of the things that always kind of scared me is I read a lot of stories about how the visas are processed. And there was a lot of talk about your employer will take your passport. And you may not receive it until the end of your contract and blah, 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 blah. And it just seemed like a kind of scary situation in which you were basically left at the mercy of your employer. What's the real situation?
Okay, so I heard that rumor in 2014, but I never experienced that, like handing you over your passport. Like I had to hand over my passport to Blue Force just to put my military stamp inside. Okay. Or to get my military, my pass to go on the military base. No, like my advice is to search online for jobs. I use Dave's ESL Cafe, but I don't use it anymore, so I don't know if that's even still around.
It's still
around.
But
find like TOEFL.com or Serious Teachers. Just do a lot of investigating and try and see if you can talk to someone that's there. Like do the same lessons you learn in South Korea. Like ask questions like, what's the class size? How long are the classes? What book am I using? What are the hours like? But generally, knock on wood, I never had any problem with visas. And most 90% of the time, they'll bring you on a work visit visa because it's quicker for you to get here. You can, if you accepted a job now and you're on a work visit visa, you'd probably be here within 2 weeks. But while you're here, they can transfer your visa into an Agama, which I have. So when you're on a work visit visa, you don't really have any rights. You can't open up a bank account. You can't rent a car. You can't rent a phone. They'll do a direct deposit. You can work, but you can't do a direct deposit. They'll deposit your salary into your account. So they'll do that for you.
Okay.
But also like a work visit visa, they'll probably neither give you a single entry or a multiple entry visa. So a multi-entry visa, like every 90 days you gotta come in and out, go to Bahrain and come back. So it restarts the visa.
Okay. That's interesting. A lot of similarities of how things are done in Japan because the visa process takes so long. People usually get to Japan on a tourist visa and start working, mind you, illegally, and while the company takes care of the visa process. And similar thing done in Turkey as well. You get like 3 months, I think. No, 30 days? I can't remember. 3 months or 3 months, I think. And then you have to leave. We'd go to Bulgaria, which is just like a rabbit's hop away. We'd literally walk across the border, get our passport stamps, have some coffee in Bulgaria, and come back to Turkey. for another reset of 30 days or 3 months rather.
Yeah, like the visa. I think the visa is very similar to like my GOM is very similar to your E2 visa. Like I remember the E2 visa. Your E2 visa, you're tied to your company. Like could be Shane English, or it could be Young Jin, or it could be Young Nam. Now, and I also remember too. Like I remember I was in between jobs back in the Wild West in 2003. So I worked on a tourist visa. But you were really hustling back then. Like Mondays at this school, Tuesdays at this school, Wednesdays at this school. So if I were to ever come back to South Korea and work, like I would never have to do that ever again because I have what I have now financially. So I feel very lucky. Like anywhere I decide to work, I can do it because I like it.
Right.
It's not because I have. So like say with the COVID virus, hey Merman, we need to send you back home. We can't afford you. Like I have enough. I can live comfortably for a couple of years.
Nice. That's always good. All right. Well, we're heading up to the 1 hour limit, so I think we're going to start wrapping it up slowly.
Okay.
Murray, it's been a pleasure. Very good info. Any last advice to people in South Korea or people traveling to Saudi Arabia, new ESL teachers? Words of wisdom.
One, you have to enjoy teaching. Like when you think about it, South Korea really only pays $2,000 a month. You can make more money doing that back home. So you have to enjoy doing what you're doing. Like enjoy it. And you're gonna have bad classes, right? So just take things day by day. Good news follows bad news. But it's a very fulfilling career, teaching English abroad, and I don't regret doing it. And I've dipped my toe a few times home in Canada, but I just feel like when I was a little spunky 23-year-old 19 years ago when I first started this journey, like I feel like I could do another 19 as of today.
Nice. All right, man. Thanks a lot for joining. Thanks a lot for agreeing to do this podcast. Very good info, dude.
Yeah, thank you, Jack.
Yeah, and all the best, man. Keep us updated. Maybe we'll hit you up again in a couple of months and see how things are going once SA is back to normal.
Okay.
All right.
All right, I'll see you in a couple months then.
Yeah, take care, man.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye. And there you go. That was a very cool chat. Murray's doing fantastically. It seems he seems to be doing quite well. A lot happier. I gotta go to fix the mistakes that were pointed out by my favorite commenter, Cooler Chats. Thanks, Cooler Chats, a lot for pointing those out. Anyone here, if this is your first visit to the Living Korea channel, to the Korea podcast, make sure to, if you like this podcast, if you like the style, and if you like the information contained in this one, Sheila's here. Hey, Sheila, glad to see you here. Make sure to hit the like on the video. Don't forget to do that. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching after the recording, or if you are visiting now. There's only 4 people in chat. I think one of them is me. Sheila, I was following. Fantastic, great. Yeah, it was a lot of good information. Like I said, told Murray, I always wanted to, not always wanted, but I've toyed with the idea of moving to Saudi Arabia, even after we got married with my wife. Even then, I was kind of, toying with the idea, or we were toying with the idea of moving there. It never came to fruition for one reason or another. Now we're here running our own business, and that keeps us busy as heck, and there's hardly anything else that we can do. And it's a roller coaster, an ongoing roller coaster with everything that's happening with the COVID and everything else around it. So yeah, this was a very interesting chat and something that I really wanted to find out about. It was a bit of information that Murray was able to shed and share about Saudi Arabia, because I feel like Saudi Arabia is kind of um, it's a very foreign land. Like, you know, Korea, you see a lot more of South Korea on the news. There's a lot more about South Korea. It's in the movies and la di da blah. There's always something happening on the peninsula, and it's in the news, right? But Saudi Arabia is still kind of it's not a closed-off country, but I don't think you get as much news, you know, outside of um, the news that we get from like CNN and BBC, which mostly contains stuff in regards to terrorism or oil or just stuff that's really irrelevant and not so much about the culture there. So talking to Murray here was quite refreshing. Maybe I'm gonna see if I can come up with like some specific questions to ask him, and we can bombard him with like, I don't know, culturally geared questions about Saudi Arabia in the next podcast. In the meantime, next week we've got Greg. Brother, I forget Greg's last name. Greg is going to be on the podcast, and he's going to be talking to us about. My vocal sound is low right now. Oh, bugger. Yeah, I don't know. It's time to upgrade my microphone. That's what's happening. I don't know why that is happening. How about now? Is that any better? Probably not, hey? Yeah, I can hear myself. The music is quite high. Maybe that's what it is. But yeah, I need to get a new mic. It's time to invest in a new mic. So that's going to be coming up within the next while, and hopefully that's going to fix the problem, because the mic that I've been using for the past 3 years, I think it's outlived itself. So yeah. So that's that. That's that for this week's episode of the Korea podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks, Sheila. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Cooler Chats. And most of all, thank you, Murray, Lindsay, for showing up and you know, providing us with some very cool information. Today is the 20th of July, Monday. So I wish you all a fantastic week. I'm looking at the feed on my phone, and the sound is okay, Sheila. Maybe. 안녕하세요, 혜은이. Hello, 혜은이. So maybe, Sheila, maybe it's your phone. Turn up the volume. Anywho, thank you all for joining in. 혜은이, make sure to hit the subscribe button, like the video, like the podcast. Come back for a next one. On Friday, I'll be uploading another video to the Live in Korea channel. And please don't forget to check out the Live in Korea Facebook page. Join there. I always upload new information, new material. Any updates that are happening on the channel will be uploaded to the Live in Korea Facebook page. Yeah, we'll see you in the next week's podcast. Have a fantastic weekend. Not weekend. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next week. Have a good night.